Do you ever just go online and wish, I kind of just want to look at art instead of seeing people post about negativity all the time? Well, look no further than Pixiv. Pixiv is a Japanese art website made for artists by artists, and the sheer number of illustrations on that website is staggering. It's kind of like if DeviantArt didn't suffer from the enshittification of the early 2010s logo change debacle, or didn't bend the knee to AI. It's like if ArtStation had a more dedicated community rather than just being a portfolio website. It's like if you could take a look into the general vibes of the Japanese art community without having to fly overseas for it all. It's great, and I like using the website. What if I told you you could hold some of these works in your own two hands? No, I don't mean like printing it out on some crappy printer paper. You can have a whole catalog of 170 artists, people at the top of their creative game, all contained within the covers of a single book. Let me introduce you to Pixiv Visions. Every year, Pixiv releases a catalog of 170 artists. No AI, no bullshit, and it's all set to print around September time. The criteria for being in this book is simply that you post on Pixiv, and you get a certain amount of traction on the site while demonstrating your artistic skill. It's not restricted to only Japanese artists, but the majority of these artists in the catalog do speak Japanese or know at least enough to post on the website. I am the proud owner of copies 2021 through 2026 of Pixiv Visions. And I knew that I wanted to make a video about how great of a resource these books were for broadening what a successful artist's work looks like, but I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to do that. The art within the books is all demonstrative of what a good artist can be, and I thought that focusing on a few artists in the book to review them didn't really seem right either, because the books are made to broaden your viewpoint. Focusing on a handful of artists and commenting on their art felt like a moot point. Why would you need my commentary to look at someone's work? You would just get the book yourself and form your own opinions, obviously. But anyways, while I was brainstorming ideas for this video, I would often flip through to like a random page and get sidetracked studying the illustrations there instead of coming up with a script for this video. And that's what it hit me. Instead of yapping about why you should buy the books or use them as reference material, why don't I just show it being used as such? Welcome to Fecta's very own Pixiv Visions Art Reference Challenge. In this video series, I'll flip to a random page of one of my Pixiv Visions books and draw something using that artist's work as a reference or inspiration. It will also serve as a comprehensive deep dive into the media that that particular artist has worked on, where they post now, and the points of their art style that stand out to me as exceptional. I encourage you to also try this challenge for yourself. You might get an artist whose art style directly conflicts with your own. In seeing a new perspective on art, you may learn something new. In this video, I'll start with the oldest Pixiv Visions book that I own. That would be the 2021 edition. When I flipped through the book, I stopped on a random page, and I was met with bunny boys? Wait, they kind of look familiar. Okay, so this is introducing Kinako, or Kamabo Koita on Twitter. It turns out, I've known about this particular artist for a while, and they've been active doing commercial art for as far back as I believe 2014, according to their website. And they've worked on several popular IPs that you might recognize. When I was a high schooler, I remember playing a game that was not yet translated into English about personified sword boys, and while simultaneously being interested in a short 2-season anime called Gatchaman Crowds. Yeah, no, my dumb ass did not put two and two together that they worked on both of those IPs at the same time that I was interested in them. So for Touken Ranbu specifically, Kinako was responsible for the character designs and splash art for Iwatoshi, Shizuka Gata Naginata, and last but not least, my favorite Naginata unit, Tomoe Gata Naginata. I drew this guy so much in high school, but I don't have any photos of my art from back then, so you're gonna have to trust me on this one. I was a Torabu fiend in my freshman and sophomore years, but for the early onset on-stars brain rot that has continued to this day. For Gatchaman Crowds, Kinako takes on a more senior role as a character designer for the show, and partnered with Yuichi Takahashi as the chief animation director and my goat, Kenshi Nakamura of Mononoke fame, as the director. They make an insane trio. You can really see the influence that Kinako had on the character design direction when you compare characters from Gatchaman Crowds with their original characters, and then also the characters that they designed for Torabu. When I look at Kinako's art, the thing that really strikes me the most is the color contrast. The colors are so vibrant and it pulls your attention really easily. One could almost call it gaudy, but they have an undeniable appeal to them. I'd compare them to high fructose corn syrup or like artificially flavored candies. They're really fun to eat and observe. The second thing I noticed is the way that the characters are designed. Kinako tends to have the boy characters having really short hair with like exposed foreheads, and then highly androgynous characters that could also be cited as LGBT plus representation. In this case, you can see both of these design preferences in Gachamon crowds, citing Sugane Tachibana, OD, Rui Nishinomiya, and Birdcutts. So, knowing these things about Kinako's art style, I tried drawing something based off of these design principles. Lately, I've been having a lot of Pokemon brain rot, so it's no surprise that when Pokemon released ZA and they made Corbeau, I was entranced immediately, and I really wanted to draw him for a hot second now. So I thought, hey, like, this character in particular kind of has similar design principles to what Kinako designs, so I'll just go ahead and I'll draw him. When I was sketching the pose for Corbeau, I realized I was trying to reinvent the wheel. Or in other words, I was drawing without a pose reference. I looked through the poses that Kinako had drawn, and I decided to reference the Gachamon Crowd's collab cafe art as a pose reference. The forward, foreshortened leg and foot was definitely not something I would have considered trying, if not for looking at a reference. Next, I started lining the drawing. Lately, I've been doing lineless drawings or using stroke layer styles around blocks of color to do my line art digitally, so getting back into doing traditional digital line art was an interesting experience. My initial observation for Kinako's line art was that it was very thin in official collaboration works. The second thing that I noticed was that in Kinako's sketches, there was a lot more variation in the line width, so I ended up going back and thickening some lines to make line width variants. The line art step took significantly longer than usual because I was trying to match the vibes of the sketch that Kinako drew of Corbeau, and I found that taking a little extra time to polish things early on leads to fewer issues later, and a better final product. In other words, water is wet, and I also tend to prioritize speed over quality, so I really forced myself to slow down and think through what I was working on. In terms of coloring, flats are pretty straightforward, but I made the colors a little more saturated than I usually do. I also put a stroke layer style for the highlights, and then I also used black to shade. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. No, Fecto, why are you using black to shade? You're not supposed to do that. Okay, so when people usually say that, they're usually referring to, like feathery, more, like, muddy-looking colors happening when you shade with black. But in this case, when you're shading with black and self-shading, it actually gives a pretty, like, striking effect. I was initially hesitant to do the larger areas of black because I thought it might distract from the amount of detail, especially with the legs, but it seems to have worked out. And finally, it's done. Thank you so much for watching the video. I encourage you to try the Pixiv Visions challenge yourself too. And if you do, feel free to tag me or send me a link. I love looking at people's art. Anyway, bye bye, have a goose day.